Hey everybody, this is Booty Bopper here for the Q&A that I announced about a week ago, and I am here to go ahead and answer all the questions that you all submitted. Now, this video will be divided into two parts. The first part dealing mostly with the Fire Emblem questions, and the second part dealing with the more general questions or the questions about different topics. So, the first thing I would like to do, as we begin this Q&A, is I'd like to shout out all of my current patrons. Thank you to everybody who has signed up, including Thomas G Groh, Dabney, Amelia, saltyPrime, NeoSigma, Nathaniel Peters, Edub, Besipeitl, estJuice, the best kind of juice, Zooplord, Tyler Cordell, ThatIcarusKid, Sea Salt Boy, Nin, BMO Mgrimm, Ascended Bagels, and Alex Edgar. Thank you all so much for your support on Patreon, and hopefully I can continue to deliver content that is worthy of all of your contributions. And of course, thank you to everybody else who supports in their own way, whether that's through liking, commenting, subscribing, or watching the videos with ad revenue, or super chatting during the live streams. Again, this is a celebration of 5,000 subscribers, so it is because of you all that I am where I am now on YouTube, and I thank you all so much for the honor of being able to get up here and speak and make content for you all, make videos that you all enjoy and that you all listen to. It's been an incredible pleasure, and I hope to continue it for a long time. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the questions. Again, these are going to be the Fire Emblem questions. I've grouped many of these questions together into different categories to try to keep a good flow and to make sure that questions that were repeated or very similar are all grouped together so I can knock them out all together. So the first question that I got a couple people asking me roughly the same thing, which is, how did I get into Fire Emblem? You know, how did I find out about it? How did I learn about it? How did I get into it? That question was asked by Hollow Mass, Nathan Keel, Nick Kaminke, and It's the Bland Man. So, I, like a lot of people in the West, first heard about Fire Emblem through Super Smash Bros. Melee, way back on the GameCube. At that time, though, I did not know anything about the series, and I was also incredibly young, about 7, when I first played Melee. And I never looked into the series. The earliest memory I have of a Fire Emblem specific thing that I saw outside of Smash Bros. Was a gigantic ad, like a huge poster that they had of the Blazing Sword at Toys R Us. This must have been way back in like 2003, roughly when the game was released in the United States. But I didn't play the games, I didn't try the games out until significantly later, when somebody recommended me online that I play it. I had a YouTube channel way back when I was about in 8th grade. Yeah, about 8th grade, 9th grade. And it didn't go anywhere. I didn't have any viewers really, but I had a couple people that would comment every once in a while, and someone told me, you should play Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones on the channel. That'd be really fun. And so me, overexcited to have a viewer, did what they said. I went and I played it. And I did it as a Let's Play, a blind Let's Play, and the rest is basically history. That's how I discovered Fire Emblem. Unfortunately, those videos are long gone, which sort of makes me sad, because I would love to be able to go back and see the first times I played the series, because, oh man, I bet it was super embarrassing. I bet it was really bad. And it would have been Sacred Stone's normal mode, more than likely. So, oh, I'm sure it was embarrassing. I'm sure it was awful. But then again, I embarrassed myself enough on all of my live streams and the way I play the game. So I guess not much has changed. I've never gotten good at the games. And then a few people ask similar questions regarding why I like Fire Emblem. So Anton Nielsen asks, what draws you to Fire Emblem? And It's the Bland Man asks, what was the first thing about Fire Emblem that you liked, found unique about it? And then Federico Ricardo Silveira, sorry for mispronouncing your last name, I'm sure that's a complete mispronunciation. What about Fire Emblem is so compelling to the point that you made a YouTube channel mostly focused on it? What keeps me coming back to Fire Emblem despite other gaming franchises? So, Fire Emblem, to me, the most unique thing about it, and the thing that stood out to me at first, when I first played the games, was the roster. It's a very weird design decision to have a strategy tactics game with permadeath and a limited named cast. The fact that every character you play as is unique and has their own personality and their own portrait and their own character is pretty awesome, and it's something you don't see a whole lot of other games do, especially strategy games. You know, a lot of RPGs, turn-based RPGs, obviously do that, but strategy games and tactics games, like Advanced Wars or, RTSs, they don't really do that. It's not like you're playing, I don't know, Star Wars Empire at War or StarCraft or something, and it's like all unique characters. It's all like mass-produced stuff. Whereas Fire Emblem, it's all named characters that you can grow attached to over time. And then the growth rate and level up system is very appealing. I think one of the core appeals to why a lot of us keep coming back to Fire Emblem is because when you level up, it's like a dopamine kick where you see those flashing numbers come up. Not a lot of RPGs have level up screens that are as dominant, as pervasive, and as instantly readable as Fire Emblem's level up screens are. And level ups in most RPGs are always good. In Fire Emblem, they can be bad. Like, they can't make you worse unless you're playing negative growths, but they can be a disappointment. You level up, you're like, I worked really hard to get this level up. Let's see what I got. Plus skill, plus luck. And you're triggered and you're mad. Or sometimes you're raising up that terrible unit and you pop that strength speed level up and you're like, bruh, my hard work's paying off right now. That's instantly appealing. And the fact that these games have randomized growth rates, or growth rates that produce random levels, that's a really bad design decision in a vacuum. But for the effect that creates is incredible, because it makes every player's experience different, and it makes every time you go through the game different. And it allows all these new stories to form when you're playing the games. Everyone has their own unique story, and every time you play the game, it's a unique story. And that's what keeps bringing me back to the series every time. So then, got 3 questions here that are quite similar. Noel B asks, what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you while playing any Fire Emblem? And then LE asks, what is your favorite everything is fine moment? So, for the funniest thing that's ever happened while playing any Fire Emblem is actually my blind playthrough of Thracia 776, which is unlisted on this channel. You can go see it. In Chapter 4X, I have Dawson the Armor Knight light a torch, and there's like 400 dudes surrounding him. It's just in the fog. They get revealed. And that's one of my favorite moments in the series, because it's a cruel, cruel joke. It's a ridiculously mean moment of Fog of War, and it's super funny. I love that moment so much. And my favorite everything is fine moment first of all, this refers to something that I say a lot during live streams, which is variations on everything is okay, everything's going to be fine, you all worry too much, whenever I do things that are questionable. And I think my favorite everything is fine moment has to be the Seth Gambit in the Sacred Stones Iron Man, where I warped Seth in front of Reeve and like 5 promoted enemies with Vidofnir, and was like, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna work out. And both Seth and Sele faced a substantial chance of death, and I got away with it, and it worked out, and I killed Reeve on the following player phase and ended the chapter before we got overrun. Great moment. Super hype. BMO Mgrimm's question is, what is your most miserable moment in Fire Emblem? This is one that I have a little bit of conflicted feelings about, which is the answer to this immediately is Gilliam's death in the Sacred Stones Iron Man. Because, on one hand, I had promised, before that live stream started, I had promised Iron Colon that I was going to kill Fomortis with Gilliam. And for Gilliam to be not only the first death of any live stream I'd ever done, the fact that he also died in the arena and died a wretched death to a 3% crit made it so awful, and I felt so bad, and I felt so defeated. Now, the reason I'm conflicted about this, though, is that it became sort of a watershed moment in my channel because it generated the first meme where Gilliam now is a legend because of this. Gilliam has become... I have seen Gilliam explode to in a small way, in a very intimate kind of way, but his popularity I've seen go up, and I don't know what contribution I have to that, into Gilliam now being a more popular character and someone that people talk about a little bit more. I don't know if that has anything to do with me at all, but seeing Gilliam's popularity kind of go up after what happened, and then the emergence of the 3% crit as being the most terrifying number in Fire Emblem, and Gilliam, say Gilliam again, being a meme, something that I said offhand, that has been a lot of fun. But that's still, his death hurts. It hurts really bad, because I still wish I could have carried him through to the end game. So then we got a string of questions here that are all very similar. I'm just going to read them all in order. Would you rather marry Bors or Tobias? Which is your favorite meme from this channel, and why is it our Lord and Savior Tobias? What do you think is the best... Who do you think is the best Husbando in the entire Fire Emblem franchise, and why is it Tobias? So, those questions were asked by Alder SFC, MC, and Justin Renouf. Thank you all for your excellent questions there. So, if I would rather marry Bors or Tobias... I mean, that one is it's got to be Bors, but it's also got to be Tobias. That's a tough one. I don't know. That might be a multiple choice question where you kind of try to bubble in both answers to see if you can get away with it on the test. That's probably what I'm going to do on that one. There isn't enough about Tobias. Like, if I wanted to seriously analyze that, I don't know if I could. So, I do love them both, though. I think I'd go with Tobias, though, because Tobias is my man. Bors is not one of my favorite Armor Knights in the series. And Armor Knights are going to come back up again. But Project Ember Bors is a lot of fun. But Tobias is a real man. And then my favorite meme from this channel, why is it our Lord and Savior Tobias? Honestly, I don't know if Tobias is my favorite meme. I know MC is loading this question here just for me. And I agree with the sentiment. But I have no idea what my favorite meme from this channel is, because I really don't know what all the memes are. Because I have memes in my own head, and then there's, of course, the viewers' memes, your all's memes that you all have of watching. I don't know what all those are. So, hard to say on that one. But Tobias is a good one. Chad is a good one. I think it's not a meme, but Trek's death at the end of Binding Blade should have been one. But I think my favorite meme is going to be Always for Pleasure. I think that's what I'm going to go with, is Always for Pleasure. That line is very special to me. And then who do I think the best Husbando in the entire franchise is? Okay, so that's a tough one. Because there's a lot of different words you can use to describe different characters. You can go Husbando, you can go Daddy, you can go Himbo. Of course, there's a lot of great ones. Gilliam, Dick. You know, those guys are legends. Balthus. I almost want to go Balthus because I think he's really funny that he's just like this nearly 30-year-old dude who's just living underground so that nobody can find him. But that he's like trying to hide, but he also is the most flamboyant, outgoing, like, obviously, he's the least subtle person imaginable. He runs around killing people, screaming, "It's good to be king." I'm going going Balthus. And then HHSS asks, who's the best Fire Emblem daddy in Husbando? Well, we already said for Husbando, that is Balthus. But for daddy, it's got to be Tyronio. I don't think there's any debate on that one. It's got to be Tyronio. And speaking of Tyronio, we got favorite armor knight. This was asked by It's the Bland Man. And favorite armor knight's Gilliam. I think that one goes without saying, which leads us into Edgelord Guilford, his comment, or his question, which is, across all forms of media, what romantic partner would be best for Gilliam? When I read this question, I had to think about it for quite a while. And like, because he says across all forms of media. So, like, I want to pick somebody outside of media, like outside of Fire Emblem. But at the same time, I in good conscience, I can't pick anybody other than Garcia as his best romantic partner, because that's got to be one of the most wholesome ships in the whole franchise, is Gilliam Garcia. And it works. Their supports are great, and they're really funny out of context, too. And they're not, like, creepy like the Erica Ephraim ones. They're really wholesome. So then Luke TS asks, what is your favorite Fire Emblem character design-wise? So I'm going to assume here that Luke is just referring to the design independent of, like, character or gameplay. And so that there's so many characters, like 700 characters in the series, or 600 characters or something. And it's hard to keep all those designs, straight. But some of the ones I really like Sigurd a lot. I like his design. I like Titania's design. I think Titania's a really pretty design. Who else kind of stands out? Mordecai is a great design. I love Mordecai a whole lot. And then, like, you got guys like Dussel. That dude's a fucking beast. That guy, I'm kind of sad that, I wanted to pick Dussel for best daddy, but, like, that's got to be Tyronio. So yeah, Dussel, and then, like, villains, you got, like, Orson and Valter are great designs for different reasons. It's a lot of picks there, but probably of playable characters, probably going to go Titania. Non-playable characters, Orson. Then we got, when are you finishing FE5? All caps, yelled at me from Red Knight. Red Knight is the OG, the original Booty Bopper commenter. And for those of you who don't know, I have a blind Let's Play of Thracia 776 on this channel that's unlisted. You can see it in the playlist section of my channel. And I've gotten up to about chapter 12 in that run. I don't know when I'm going to finish it. If I finish it, this is, of course, up to what people want, because I was doing that series back when I had like 30, 35 subscribers. So it is a genuine question as to, do I continue that series when nobody knows what it is? Or do I kind of just start Thracia over and stream it? I don't know. And I'll let people kind of decide on that one. Would you all rather see Thracia 776 in a Let's Play form or live streamed? Blind? I would prefer live stream, I think. But I'll let the people decide what they would want to see. And then Midnight Cowboy, the legend, the man himself, he asks, Fun is for Casuals series when? So, I have to do something with Fun is for Casuals, because the Fun is for Casuals wheel was sort of a zenith moment for me. It was the video I put out that exploded the most quickly compared to how long it went on, which is really funny because that video is like just kind of it's just an explanation of a dumbass wheel. But now that challenge run, people shared with me all kinds of stories of how they've done it. So I'm going to do Fun is for Casuals, and I have a plan for it. We're actually going to get a Fun is for Casuals piece of content very soon, and you will get an announcement about what that is in the near future. So stay on the lookout for that in the next couple weeks. And then Leanne Brown asks, when can we see some spicy challenge run videos? Same thing I'm going to say to Midnight Cowboys. Stay tuned for a couple weeks. We'll get some Fun is for Casuals in there. And then, of course, the other challenge run videos. Of course, I think Leanne Brown in her comment, she had said, no pacifist path of radiance. That will come back at some point. I don't know when, but it'll come back. And there's also a solo run challenge that's going to happen very soon that you will see, that I'm very excited for. You all might be able to guess who I'm soloing which game with. So then we have Autonomous Alt asking, who's your favorite bad unit to use in Fire Emblem? As in a low tier unit that I like using. So, you know, which bad unit, which character that's bad that I really like. And I'm going to go Marissa from the Sacred Stones. I would go Gilliam, because Armor Knights are kind of the legendary thing on this channel, but Armor Knights are not my favorite bad class type to use. They're up there. They're like number 2. But I love bad Sword Masters. Only some of them, though. Like, late game Sword Masters I really like using that suck. Marissa's really fun to use because she's so antithetical to what you need in Sacred Stones. In Sacred Stones, what you want is 1-2 range, an amount, and good bulk. And she has none of that. She's sword locked and has no 1-2 range and is foot locked and has no durability. So turning her into like a beast that can just deal like 30 damage to Femortis with that Holma was very satisfying in the Iron Man. And I make a point to use Marissa almost every time I play the game. I also just like Marissa's design too. I think it's pretty cool. So that helps. Same for another character I like to use every time. Like bad units that I like to use in every playthrough is like Bastion and Lucia in Path of Radiance. I like using them. Bastion because he speaks in iambic pentameter, as it turns out, which is awesome. And Lucia because, well, I mean, you know, pretty. So, you know, lizard brain. Then we have some specific gameplay questions. This question's from Parker, and this one's kind of wordy. So let's see if we can keep track of this. So he's asking about the Fates weapon triangle. He's saying, in Fates, there's a ranged weapon triangle in addition to the regular melee triangle. It's just, you know, hidden weapons over tomes, over bows, over hidden weapons. And he's asking if I think that this type of ranged triangle actually works within Fire Emblem or if it's a lost cause. So, in most Fire Emblem games that have had ranged weapon triangles, it's usually just been magic triangles. And I think, like, Genealogy had one, the GBA games had them, and Tellius has it, I think? But the reason why I can't even remember is because in most of the games, like in GBA and in Tellius, the magic triangle doesn't fucking matter at all. It doesn't do anything. It's not worth ever considering. I never consider it, and I've never really... there's probably been an instance where I've... You know, maybe with someone like Sele, you know, maybe you leverage weapon triangle a little bit for a little bit of extra hit, you know, but generally that's never a thing. So I think most of the time it is a lost cause. However, in Fates, the weapon triangle for those things is very powerful. And I remember one thing Parker did point out was that it makes mages really bad in Fates, and it does, because mages just get obliterated by everything in Fates. I think it doesn't help that in Fates your mages are all pretty crappy, like Nyx and... Who's the other one? My darkness is darker than yours? Owain Dark or something? I don't remember what his Fate's name is, and it's Owain in Awakening. But... Odin Dark. Odin. They're all bad. Orochi is okay in Birthright, but like mostly because the enemy quality in Birthright's pretty low. And she also is like your capture person. So I don't like... I think I like that weapon triangle with what Fates does, but I think it should have been depowered a little bit. But Actually, you know what? The fact that it stacks on the weapon triangle is bad. I don't like the weapon triangle in Fates. I think it causes you... It's even more stuff you have to unnecessarily keep track of when you play Fates. And Fates is already pretty demanding on your ability to keep track of a lot of different things. And I find that the weapon triangle either usually doesn't matter or screws you over. Which is really weird because in most Fire Emblem games, it works in the player's favor. There are times where you can leverage it to your own advantage pretty well. But it usually just screws over your mages. Because, like, if you're a ninja, who cares about weapon triangle? Because you're just there to debuff. And if you're an archer, you're just there to chip. You know, or it's like a super player phase game like Conquest where you want to, you know, kill as many enemies as quickly as possible on player phase. And so you just don't have time to worry about the weapon triangle. So then the Death Nerve asks, which support system do I think was the best? And do I think that it should have a bigger or lesser effect on gameplay? So, the best support system in the franchise, I think, was Path of Radiance, because supports were very overpowered in that game. But unlike, they were very similar to the GBA ones in that they were super powerful. They just allowed you to, like, avoid stack and crit stack and do all kinds of crazy things if you knew how affinities worked. But unlike the GBA games, you couldn't grind them. But you would also actually get them. The GBA system for support sucks because building them is a nightmare. Just not fun at all. Standing units next to each other for like 30 turns, 40 turns, particularly in like a game like Binding Blade where supports build super slowly. But in Path of Radiance, for those of you who don't know, supports build by you having units deployed on the map together. Every map you have 2 units deployed together that support each other, they gain 1 support point. And when they hit their requisite amount of support points, they get to their next level of support, C, B, and then A. And I think that is the best they've ever done because it prevents grinding. It also gives long-term reward for keeping units alive, while also allowing late-game units the chance to support as well because their support points they need is obviously much lower because they don't have nearly as many maps around. So I really like that support system, and I like that it's super powerful. I like giving the player more options and more tools. Overpowered supports allow you to play more aggressively and play more dangerously and play like a maniac, and I really like that. Anyone who watches my streams knows I like to play like a maniac, so avoid stacking is really fun, and crit stacking is really fun, and Path of Radiance's support system allows you to do that while also gating it off in such a way where you don't waste your time grinding. Then Broccoli Dude is hitting us up with the fact that he loves Daddy Douglas a lot. He says he loves him so much because he's so good. That he wanted to ask my opinion of the Green Unit Squad and if I think they actually make the chapters easier or if they barely help at all. For those of you who don't know, this is a reference to Project Ember, the Binding Blade hack that I recently Iron Man'd on the channel, the one created by Brunhilde and Chu, among other people. And what you can do is when you get Douglas in that game, if you talk to Douglas with Roy at any point in a map, you can use the reinforce skill, which is basically like reinforce from Tellius, where Douglas will then summon a ton of green units onto the field, like pre-promoted paladins and Valkyries and Great Knights and Armor Knights and Generals and all kinds of crazy stuff. They just start storming the field. Now that sounds really overpowered, and to a certain extent it is, because you almost always get a Valkyrie that has Fortify, and you get like Mage Knights that have Siege Tomes. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Now, it doesn't break the game, though. I think what it does, it helps a little bit, and it can take the heat off of you. It's not crazy good, but what it does do is it sort of turns the tide of the battle, makes it feel more epic, has a very good tone. It's very good tonally. Makes the battle feel awesome. And it also gives you some wiggle room to work with. I think the fact that the green units are they're weak, but they're strong. They're strong enough to do stuff, but they're weak enough to where the enemies are going to prioritize them if they can. So it takes the heat off of your guys. And I think making your enemy phases better is particularly good, especially for monstrous chapters like chapters 21 and 22. Really like the green guys. in there. Like, that Douglas Reinforced skill is ridiculously good. It's not as broken as you'd think it would be, but it is really nice, and you always would want to do it every chance you get. And then Falcon Kirby asks one more question about Project Ember, which is opinion on the whole 2-3 range archers. So bows being 2 to 3 range in Project Ember makes them probably the best bows in the entire franchise, official game, hack, or otherwise. 2 to 3 range bows completely change the way you approach the game. And that's actually what I like about them. It turns the game into pretty much player phase all the time, because 1-2 range options are pretty bad. Javelins and hand axes are really low might, and enemies get pretty stonk in terms of HP. A lot of them are capping out their HP by the end game. So javelins and hand axes are not relevant too much past the early game in Project Ember, but then bows just completely bust it wide open, because not only do you have like archers and not only do you have snipers that can use, but you also have generals that can use bows, and you have warriors that can use bows. And that is bananas that you can have chunky armor knights and warriors running around, like Wade running around using bows. And it makes a lot of units. If a unit can get bows, it makes them very good. So I actually have learned to really like 2 to 3 range archers, because a lot of units and a lot of enemies in Binding Blade have cap skill, and it's very difficult to deal with enemies that have cap skill safely, because they're almost always going to have quite a bit of crit on you, even if they're not using a killer weapon. And 2 to 3 range bows allow you to kind of take that crit off of the table and prevent you from always having to face these high percentage crits. And since bows are 2 to 3 range, it actually gives them fairly unique utility. It's utility that Binding Blade was not built for, so it is broken, but it gives them unique utility that they wouldn't have if they were 1 to 2 range, which is how a lot of hacks try to balance bows. So I really like them. I used to not, but I really came around to them, particularly because of how it lets you avoid getting destroyed by critical hits all the time. Carbo asks, what FE games do I feel like the highest difficulty is the best way to play, and what games do I feel like it's the worst? So essentially what he's asking is what games are at their best at the highest difficulties and what games are at their worst at the highest difficulties. The games that are at their best at the highest difficulty are generally the easier games, where it feels like they built them from the hard mode down. So the hard mode is like where they spent their time developing the game. So games like Sacred Stones, Path of Radiance, not Maniac mode Path of Radiance, but English Path of Radiance hard mode is very good. Birthright is at its best Lunatic. And then I'd say Radiant Dawn would be, but they did the stupid fucking decision of taking away your ability to see enemy ranges, which is just trash and unnecessary and ridiculous. So those are the games I'd say are at their best, like Sacred Stones, Path of Radiance, Birthright, Conquest. And then games that are at their worst are like the games where the hardest difficulties are pretty not well thought out. Three Houses, your maddening mode is not very well thought out. If it was actually balanced, it would have been in the game at launch. Because it's how the game would have been built. Awakening Lunatic Plus is a disastrously bad difficulty. Path of Radiance Maniac mode is really bad, and then honestly, Radiant Dawn hard mode is like really good in principle, but really bad because you lose quality of life features on it, so I don't like that at all. And then the games I'm split on are the DS games. I don't like New Mystery, The Emblems, Lunatic, and Lunatic Reverse because they assume several things. They assume Rainbow Potion. The game is technically beatable without it, but it's pretty clear that it assumes that you're going to use it. It also assumes that you have, mixed class lines. It also assumes Lunatic stab boosters. So I think, even though you don't need any of those to beat the game technically, it does play as if those are assumed. And then Shadow Dragon Hard 5 has a really, really bad first 3 chapters. One of the worst 3-chapter stretches in the series, mostly because of the horrendous boss design of chapters 2 and 3 of that game on Hard 5, with Gomer and Hyman. And then Hard 5 Shadow Dragon in general is just not all that fun because it's a super easy game to break that you want to break. Because if you don't break it, it's a pain in the ass. And if you do break it, it's easy as shit. And the way you break that game, if you're struggling to it, is once you get access to forging, you just forge things like Wing Spears and Rider's Banes to destroy enemies in one shot. And then you just start warp skipping chapters once you get a bunch of warp stats. Because that game gives you like 21 warp uses and a Hamern stats. There's just no excuse to like not just obliterate that entire game. And then Samuel Piera asks, how do you feel about difficulties in Fire Emblem? Do I prefer the difficulties that go overwhelmingly difficult, where they feel more like puzzles, and the examples he gives is New Mystery and Conquest, or do I prefer the lower difficulty games that are not as demanding on you and give you more wiggle room, like Blazing Sword and Sacred Stones? Now, I did a whole video on this. This was the video that is like my most popular. It has like 100,000 views now, the hard mode video. To play and to perform live on stream, I like the easier games because streaming is performative, largely, and it's all about telling a story and having crazy fun and acting like a maniac. So in that regard, Blazing Sword, Sacred Stones, Path of Radiance, those games I definitely prefer on their harder difficulty. I like their kind of less demanding nature for that reason. But if I'm sitting down and playing some Fire Emblem, sometimes I'm just in the mood. I'd say this depends on my mood, because I really enjoy Lunatic Conquest, but I don't know how I would enjoy streaming it because there's like a lot of thinking. It's mostly thinking and planning out. So it just depends on my mood. I think both of those types of difficulties have their value. But I definitely say like Conquest Lunatic is a better put together difficulty than New Mystery Lunatic. But I know a lot of people disagree on that. That's just my take on it. So Jeremy Fu asks, as someone who enjoys music, what is your favorite Fire Emblem OST? That's easy. That's Fire Emblem Echoes. Fire Emblem Echoes announces that it has the best soundtrack in the franchise from its title theme, which is incredible. And then Belderama Bomba asks, what is your favorite and least favorite story in Fire Emblem? So favorite story would be Sacred Stones, and least favorite story would be probably Conquest. Revelation story is really, really, really nonsensical and stupid, but it's at least kind of funny bad. Conquest story is just frustrating, and on top of like not making any sense from like a character motivation standpoint, nobody does anything that makes any lick of sense for who they're supposed to be. There's extreme dissonance between what they're doing and who they are. But it's not even like commenting on that. Like it's not about anything. Conquest isn't about anything, and it just is like written like dog shit. At least Revelations is way dumber, and you get some entertainment out of that. And then other, what's the word for it? Honorable mentions for best story would be like Path of Radiance. And yeah, actually that's it. Okay, PRP Gecko asks, you mentioned that I mentioned that I really enjoyed the cast of FE7, but felt it had a terrible story. He says he definitely agrees on the first point, but he's curious why I don't care for the plot of FE7. The reason I don't care for the plot of FE7 is because it does not have an interesting villain. And I think the way Fire Emblem games are structured is that villains are very necessary. I think that Nurgle he's a Saturday morning cartoon villain, but not even like the fun kind, because he's not around a ton. I think the Black Fang shares a very similar problem to Those Who Slither in the Dark, where deep, dark underground organizations that control everything, and then a boogly woogly woo evil dragon is like the least interesting type of story that Fire Emblem can do. Not that secret underground organizations are inherently bad, but Fire Emblem does not handle them well. I think that FE7's story is greatly undone by the fact that, yeah, Black Fang is just like this boring, anonymous organization, and Nurgle's just like a cartoon character. That he has a cool design in the final map, but other than that, it's literally got nothing to him. Just completely uninteresting to me, that whole conflict. Dabney72 asks, favorite Three Houses route? That'd be Blue Lions. Dan Ross asks, as a teacher, what are your thoughts on the ethical challenges inherent in most of the main characters' romance options in Three Houses? So, Byleth's romance options are really weird in Three Houses. It is strange. After the time skip, it's not as weird. I think the one that gets me is when you have, like, the meeting in the tower during, like, the dance. Or the party ball type thing, where Byleth meets one of the students that he has the highest support with in the tower, and it's framed as sort of a kind of a fan servicey type thing. That's really weird to me. I don't like it. I don't like the implications that come along with a teacher, like, fucking around in that way with students. Post time skip, it doesn't matter because, like, the world has, like, collapsed, so who cares? But during the actual thing, when Byleth is actually a teacher, it is morally and ethically not good and kind of gross. Soulmate asks, can I go into depth why I love SOV, Shadows of Valentia, so much? We got to enlighten those foul critics. So, Shadows of Valentia is the best Fire Emblem game, and it's because it has the best OST in the franchise, best soundtrack, by far the best presentation with excellent character design all over the place, excellent support conversations, a very fun story that only kind of derails itself a little bit towards the end, which is more than most Fire Emblem games can say. And it has absolutely dogshit map design. So my attachment to Echoes is like purely the emotions that game generates are way more powerful than just about any other game in the series except for Sacred Stones for me, in terms of what story is able to do. And it's remarkable how much better and how much higher quality its story is in terms of both presentation and writing and pacing than Three Houses is, despite it being a 3DS game that really did not do all that well compared to the previous 3DS games. And then along the line with Echoes, Mick237 asks, what FE game do I want remade the most? That would be the Tellius games. I want to see Tellius remade more than I want to see Jugdral remade. Jugdral remakes, they'd be so faithful that I would just end up playing Genealogy again and probably not having that much fun. But Tellius is a banger all the way through. So I want to see those remade with high quality animations and like really dope ass voice acting, because I think that'd be awesome. Piggy Better asks, if they were to set Fire Emblem in a different time period, what should they do, and what do I think of that idea? So it's hard to it's easy to forget that Awakening at one point was going to be a science fiction story set on Mars. I kind of wish that's the version we got. Like, I'm glad it's not, because I'm glad Fire Emblem survived long enough for us to get Echoes, but if they were to set in a different time period, which I hope they do, because the medieval fantasy stuff is, you know, getting kind of old after 16 or 17 games. I kind of want maybe post-industrial, like the Industrial Revolution era, where you have kind of early firearms coming into existence. I think that'd be interesting. It would definitely be different, because there's nothing that says Fire Emblem has to be fantasy. I mean, it's called Fire Emblem. It's not called Fantasy Emblem. It just has to have fire. Fire machines. Come on, brah. They could do it. Henry Davis asks, what's the least enjoyable Fire Emblem game to play? That's Revelation, because the map gimmicks absolutely destroy that game. Like, I don't want to shovel snow. I don't want to do all that bullshit ever again. But my hot take is going to be Genealogy of the Holy War, because that game is not fun to play at all. Clark Milstead asks what I would recommend for a relatively new player. I'm going to take this to mean what games would I recommend for a new player. I would recommend Sacred Stones and Path of Radiance. I think those are the easiest games in the franchise to get into as far as older games are concerned, because their difficulty is pretty lax. They're not too demanding on your ability. They give a lot of easy ways out of permadeath with the overworld map in Sacred Stones and with bonus experience in Path of Radiance. And they generally have pretty good stories as well, and they're a good, light introduction to the older games without overwhelming you mechanically. Johnson Truong asks, as a teacher, do I make lesson plans that have Fire Emblem words in it? I do not, because I don't want to talk about Fire Emblem at work. I get enough of Fire Emblem at home. Karo Chiari asks, Do you see yourself collabing with other FE YouTubers, or is this channel just something you see doing with friends? Now, I have collaborated with another FE YouTuber. I was on FED's channel not too long ago, talking about Project Ember. That was a really great time, and getting to talk to Adam was great. One of the nicest guys I've ever talked to. And that was a fun conversation. And as far as other FE YouTubers beyond FED, I have an announcement that I'm going to put out pretty soon regarding a collab with it. I'm not going to say anything now, but when it's okay for me to, you'll see an announcement. And that'll be in the next week, more than likely. So then, Senum Verada asks, what gameplay elements from other games would you like to see in Fire Emblem? I thought about this question quite a bit. At first, I wanted to say Resident Evil 4's Tetris inventory, because I think it'd be funny, but that's also would be terrible. But one thing I was thinking about was, okay, so in Devil May Cry, you have really bad voice acting. No. Fire Emblem already has it. In Devil May Cry, you have the style system, where if you play in a more aggressive, more dangerous, crazy way, you get rewarded for it with more orbs that you can spend to upgrade shit. And that had me thinking about what are ways that Fire Emblem can reward more aggressive play, get you to play more like a maniac. And I'm thinking maybe like a momentum system where if your unit's like a horse unit, if you push them out further, if they ride more squares, they build up momentum for that turn. So like their attacks power up, or their speed increases as they move on the grid. Like the more spaces they move, the more momentum they build up. But if you frame it like a reward, so like their base strength is 10, but they get their momentum carries it up to 12 if they move their full movement. Like you frame it as a reward, you get players to play a lot more aggressively and put themselves out on the line a little more. I think that would be really cool, because then you're rewarded by clearing the map quicker. You're rewarded by having a more engaging and interesting enemy phase. I think that'd be really fun. As well, I was thinking maybe we could shake up the weapon rank system a little bit. You know, I think about how in Dark Souls you have stat thresholds you need to reach to use weapons. Very similar to weapon ranks in Fire Emblem, except Dark Souls scales it. So you can use a weapon that you don't have the stats for, but you can't really swing it and you can't really do damage with it. But if you two-hand the weapon, you know, sacrificing your shield or your magic or whatever, if you two-hand the weapon, your strength requirement gets cut by 50%. So I think, or your strength stat gets multiplied by 1.5, and then if you cross the strength threshold, you can get it. So maybe like hitting weapon ranks allows you to use certain weapons without penalty, but you can use those weapons at any point throughout the game, but at penalties that are worse depending on how far away you are from the requisite weapon rank. Maybe something like that would be cool. I don't know. It would require a lot of tweaking. And then final question for this part is, have you ever connected with anyone over Fire Emblem? How was it? So I've been to one Super Smash Bros. Tournament in my life. I don't play Smash Bros. But I had a friend at college that wanted me to go to this tournament with him, and I did. And so I was using Ike and talking to guys like, oh, you Fire Emblem fan? And I was like, hell yeah, I'm a Fire Emblem fan. And so I talked to him for a while, and that was really fun. And he said something very interesting, something that I should have mentioned in the unit field video, but didn't, where he said, God, you know, the best stats in that game are skill and luck. And he was dead fucking serious, too. And that baffled me. You know, not just because, like, I mean, even people who love to use bad units, like, we kind of know, like, okay, strength, speed, defense, that's what you want. That's sort of the things you want to be a big, bulk, strong, fast monster. I can see where people, especially people who are more casual or who maybe don't know the mechanics of the game as much, really love skill. Because let's say you play Awakening as your first game, you got Lonku, he's flipping around, killing everything, and then that inspires you, you go back, you go play some Sacred Stones, and you got Joshua flipping all over the place, but you play Blind and Blade, you got Rutger crit and everything, and they're running around with all these capped skill, and you got this big green skill, and so you associate skill with crit, which makes sense, because skill is the most direct influence on crit. So I can see where that comes from. I cannot see where luck comes from. So that was just such a fun discussion. I have grown a new appreciation for luck over the Iron Mans because I think luck mitigates a lot of the dangers of an Iron Man if you have enough of it. But so I had a lot of fun, and there were a lot of people there actually that had played Fire Emblem, and then some guys that I know who have played it taught a guy some pretty crazy Three Houses tricks with like different skills that you can like teach. He was primarily into it for like the shipping and the waifu sim stuff in the monastery, but he still dug some hardcore gameplay every once in a while. So really a lot of fun to talk to people about Fire Emblem out there and hear the different stuff, hear the different impressions that people get of the games when they're not as involved in the community, when they're not looking at the meta or at the Reddit or watching crazy LTC runs or doing all that. Just people who are playing the games for fun, the impressions they come up with. And that was something that definitely inspired the unit feel video I just did. So anyway, that is the first part of the Q&A. I will see you all for part 2, where we will hit the non-Fire Emblem questions. And we will also announce who the winner of the giveaway for Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light is. I will see you all in that part. But as we go, again, just one more shout out to my patrons over there on Patreon: Amelia, Tyler, Cordell, BMO Mgrimm, estJuice, Edub, Besipeitl, saltyPrime, Alex Edgar, Thomas G Groh, Sea Salt Boy, NeoSigma, Dabney, Nathaniel Peters, Nin, Zooplord, ThatIcarusKid, and Ascended Bagels. Thank you all so much. And again, thank you everybody who watches, likes, subscribes, does all that. You all are the best. And I'll see you all in the next video.